Hare Krishna, Pranjal, Prabhupada, Pranam, Jai Shri Prabhupada, Haribol. Thank you for joining. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kada Mahyam Darati Svaparantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Utapatakamalam Sri Gurun Vaishnavam Sri Rupam Sagrijatam Sahagana Raghunathan Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Sri Visakan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpade Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostude Tapta Kanchana Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrisabhanusute Devi Pranamami Haripriye वंशाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्यैव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः नमां विष्णुपदाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्तस्वामी नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वते देवे गौरवाणि प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवारि पाश्चात्य देशधारिणे जय श्रीकृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौरभक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्णा हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत् शृण्वतं स्वकथा कृष्णा पुण्यश्रवणकीर्तना हृत्यन्दस्तोय भद्राणि विदुनुति सुहृत्सताम् नष्टप्रायेष्वभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवतसेवया भागवति उत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी. Before reciting the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead, Narayana, unto Nara Narayana Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Shri Vyasadeva, the author. Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is the Paramatma supersoul in everyone's heart and the benefactor of the truthful devotee, cleanses desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee who has developed the urge to hear his messages, which are in themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam ki jai, Śrīla Prabhupada ki jai. 326:17 Prakrite gunasamyasya निर्विशेषस्य मानवी चेष्टा यथा स भगवान् कालयित्युपलक्षिता. Prakrite of material nature, gunasamyasya without the interaction of the three modes, nirvisheshasya without specific qualities, manavi the other of manu, chesta movement, yataha from whom, saha he, Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, kala time, iti thus, upalakshita is designated. Translation. My dear mother, O daughter of Swayambhuva Manu, the time factor, as I have explained, is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, from whom the creation begins as a result of the agitation of the material of the neutral, unmanifested nature. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The unmanifested state of material nature, pradhana, is being explained. The Lord says that when the unmanifested material nature is agitated by the glance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, it begins to manifest itself in different ways. Before this agitation, it remains in the neutral state, without interaction by the three modes of material nature. In other words, material nature cannot produce any variety of manifestations without the contact of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is very nicely explained in Bhagavad Gita. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is the cause of the products of material nature. Without its contact, material nature cannot produce anything. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita also, a very suitable example is given in this connection. Although the nipples on a goat's neck appear to be breast nipples, they do not give milk. Similarly, material nature appears to the material scientist to act and react in a wonderful manner, but in reality it cannot act without the agitator, time, who is the representation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When time agitates the neutral side of material nature, then material nature begins to produce varieties of manifestations. Ultimately, it is said that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the cause of creation. As a woman cannot produce children unless impregnated by a man, similarly, material nature cannot produce or manifest anything unless it is impregnated by the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the form of the time factor. Text number 18. Antah Purusha Rupena Kala Rupena Yobahi Samanvedyesha Sadvanam Bhagavanatma Mayaya. Antaha, within, Purusha Rupena, in the form of super soul, Kala Rupena, in the form of time, Yaha, he who, Bahi, without, Samanviti, exists, Yasha, he, Sattvanam, of all living entities, Bhagavan, the Supreme Person of Godhead. Atma Mayaya, by his potencies. Translation. By exhibiting his potencies, the personality of Godhead adjusts all these different elements, keeping himself within as the supersoul and without as time. Purport. Here it is stated that within the heart, the Supreme Personality of Godhead resides as the supersoul. This situation is also explained in Bhagavad Gita. The supersoul rests besides the individual soul and acts as a witness. This is also confirmed elsewhere in the Vedic literature. Two birds are sitting on the same tree of the body. One is witnessing and the other is eating the fruits of the tree. This Purusha or Paramatma, who resides within the body of the individual soul, is described in Bhagavad Gita 13:23 as the Upadrashta witness and the Anumanta sanctioned authority. The conditioned soul engages in the happiness and distress of the particular body given by him by the arrangement of the external energy of the Supreme Lord. But the Supreme Living Being, or the Paramatma, is different from the conditioned soul. He is described in Bhagavad Gita as Maheshvara, or the Supreme Lord. He is Paramatma, not Jivatma. Paramatma means the Supreme. Paramatma means the super soul who is sitting by the side of the conditioned souls just to sanction his activities. The conditioned soul makes The conditioned soul comes to this material world in order to lord it over material nature. Since one cannot do anything without the sanction of the Lord, he lives with the jiva, soul, as witness and sanction giver. He is also a bhokta. He gives maintenance and sustenance, to the conditioned soul. Since the living entity is constitutionally part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Lord is very affectionate to the living entities. Unfortunately, when the living entity is bewildered or illusioned by material energy, he becomes forgetful of his eternal relationship with the Lord. But as soon as he becomes aware of his constitutional position, then he is liberated. The minute independence of the conditioned soul is exhibited by his marginal position. If he likes, he can forget the Supreme Person of Godhead and come into the material existence with a false ego to lord it over material nature. But if he likes, he can turn his face to the service of the Lord. The individual living entity is given that independence. The conditioned life is ended, and his life becomes successful as soon as he turns his face to the Lord. But by misusing his independence, he enters into material existence. Yet the Lord is so kind that as super soul, he always remains with the conditioned soul. The concern of the Lord is neither to enjoy nor to suffer from the material body. He remains with the jiva, simply a sanction giver, and witnesses, so that the living entities can receive the results of his activities, good or bad. Outside the body of the conditioned soul, the Supreme Personality of Godhead remains as the time factor. According to Sankhya system of philosophy, there are 25 elements. The 24 elements are described from plus the time factor make 25. According to some learned scholars, philosophers, this super soul is included to make a total of 26 elements. Okay, one straight, next one. Hare Krishna, Praveen, Prabhu, and Rushikesh, Prabhu, Tanda, Pram, Jai Shri Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dhanavad Pran, Jai Shri Prabhupada. Can you hear me?
Yes, Prabhu. Very clear.
Okay, Rishikesh Prabhu, do you want to take it up from here or shall I?
You can take it up.
Okay. Canto 3, chapter 26, text 19. Devatkshubhita dharminyam swasyam yonav prabah puman adhatta वीर्यं शाश्वता महत्तत्वं हिरण्मयं Synonyms. Daivat, by the destiny of the conditioned souls. Kshubita, agitated. Dharminyam, whose equilibrium of the modes. Swasyam, his own. Yonav, in the womb, material nature. Parah Puman, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Adhatta, impregnated. Viryam, Semina, is eternal potency. Sa, she, material nature. Asuta, delivered. Mahat Tattvam, the sum total of cosmic intelligence. Hiranmayam, known as Hiranmaya. Translation purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation. After the Supreme Personality of Godhead impregnates material nature with his internal potency, material nature delivers the sum total of the cosmic intelligence, which is known as Hiranmaya. This takes place in material nature when she is agitated by the destinations of the conditioned souls. Purport. The impregnation of material nature is described in the Bhagavad Gita, 14th chapter, 3rd verse. Material nature's primal factor is the Mahatattva or breeding source of all varieties. This part of material nature, which is called Pradhana as well as Brahman is impregnated by the Supreme Personality of Godhead and it delivers varieties of living entities. Material nature in this connection is called Brahman because it is a perverted reflection of the spiritual nature. It is described in the Vishnu Purana that the living entities belong to the spiritual nature. The potency of the spiritual Lord is spiritual. The potency of the Supreme Lord is spiritual, and the living entities, although they are called marginal potency, are also spiritual. If the living entities were not spiritual, this description of impregnation by the Supreme Lord would not be applicable. The Supreme Lord does not put his semina into that which is not spiritual, but it is stated here that the Supreme Person puts his semina into material nature. This means that the living entities are spiritual by nature. After impregnation, material nature delivers all kinds of living entities, beginning from the greatest living creature, Lord Brahma, down to the insignificant ant in all varieties of form. In the Bhagavad Gita 14.4, material nature is clearly mentioned as Sarva Yonishu. This means that of all varieties of species, demigods, human beings, animals, birds, and beasts, whatever is manifested. Material nature is the mother, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the seed-giving father. Generally, it is experienced that the father gives life to a child by the mother, but the mother gives its body. Although the seed of life is given by the father, the body develops with the womb of the mother. The body develops within the womb of the mother. Similarly, the spiritual living entities are impregnated into the womb of material nature, but the body, being supplied by material nature, takes on many different species and forms of life. The theory that the symptoms of life are manifest by the interaction of the 24 material elements is not supported here. The living force comes directly from the Supreme Personality of Godhead and is completely spiritual. Therefore, no material scientific advancement can produce life. The living force comes from the spiritual world and has nothing to do with the interaction of the material elements. Text 20. Vishwam Atmagatam Vyanjan Kotasto Jagad Ankuraha Swa Tejasa Pibat Vram Atma Praswapanam Tamaha. Synonyms: Vishwam, the universe; Atmagatam, conditioned within itself; Vyanjan, manifesting; Kotastaha, unchangeable; Jagat, Ankuraha, the root of all cosmic manifestations; Swa Tejasa, by its own effulgence; Apibat, swallowed up; Tebram, dense; Atma Praswapanam, which had covered the Mahatattva, Tamaha, darkness. Translation: Thus, after manifesting variegatedness, the effulgent Mahatattva, which contains all the universes within itself, which is the root of all cosmic manifestations, and which is not destroyed at the time of annihilation, swallows up the darkness which covered the effulgence at the time of dissolution. Purport: Since the Supreme Personality of Godhead is ever existing, all blissful and full of knowledge, his different energies are also ever existing in the dormant stage. Thus, when the Mahatattva was created, it manifested the material ego and swallowed up the darkness which covered the cosmic manifestation at the time of dissolution. This idea can be further explained. A person at night remains inactive, covered by the darkness of night, but when he is awakened in the morning, the covering of night, or the forgetfulness of the sleep. Similarly, the night of dissolution, the effulgence to exhibit the variety in the world. Next 21. Yattat sattva gunam swacham शान्तं भगवतः पदं यदाहुर् वासुदेवाख्यं चित्तं तन्महद् आत्मकं synonyms yat which that sattvagunam, the mode of goodness, swacham, clear, shantam, sober, bhagavatah, of the personality of Godhead, padam, the status of understanding, yat which ahuhu is called vasudeva atmakam, by the nature Vasudeva, Chittam, consciousness, Tat, that, Mahat Atmakam, manifest in the Mahat Tattva. Translation: the mode of goodness, which is the clear, sober status of understanding the personality of Godhead, and which is generally called Vasudeva or consciousness, becomes manifest in the Mahat Tattva. Purport: the Vasudeva manifestation or the status of understanding the Supreme Personality of Godhead is called pure goodness or Suddha Tattva, Suddha Sattva. In the Suddha Sattva status, there is no infringement of the other qualities, namely passion and ignorance. In the Vedic literature, there is mention of the Lord's expansion as the four personalities of Godhead: Vasudeva, Shankarashna, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha. Here is the reappearance of the Mahatattva. The four expansions of Godhead occur. Here in the reappearance of the Mahatattva, the four expansions of Godhead occur. He who is seated within as super soul expands first as Vasudeva. Okay. The Vasudeva stage is free from infringement by material desires and is the status in which one can understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead or the objective which is described in the Bhagavad Gita as Adbhuta. This is another feature of the Mahatattva. The Vasudeva expansion is also called Krishna consciousness, for it is free from all tinges of material passion and ignorance. This clear state of understanding helps one to know the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Vasudeva status is also explained in the Bhagavad Gita as Kshatrajna, which means the knower of the field of activities as well as the super knower. The living being who has occupied a particular type of body knows that body, but the superknower Vasudeva knows not only a particular type of body but also the field of activities in all the different varieties of bodies. In order to be situated in the clear consciousness or Krishna consciousness, one must worship Vasudeva. Vasudeva is Krishna alone. When Krishna or Vishnu is alone without the accompaniment of his internal energy, he is Vasudeva. When he is accompanied by his internal potency, he is called Dwarakadisha. To have clear consciousness or Krishna consciousness, one has to worship Vasudeva. It is also explained in the Bhagavad Gita that after many births, one surrenders to Vasudeva. Such a great soul is very rare. Bahunam janmanamante jnanavan mam pravadyante Vasudeva sarvamiti samahatma sudurlabha. In order to get release from the false ego, one has to worship Sankarshna. Sankarshna is also worshipped through Lord Shiva. The snakes which cover the body of Lord Shiva are representations of Sankarshna, and Lord Shiva is also absorbed in meditation upon Sankarshna. One who is actually a worshipper of Lord Shiva as a devotee of Sankarshna can be released from false material ego. If one wants to get free from material disturbances, one has to worship Aniruddha. For this purpose, worship of the moon planet is also recommended in the Vedic literature. Similarly, to be fixed in one's intelligence, one has to worship Pradyumna, who is reached through the worship of Brahma. These matters are explained in Vedic literature. Text 22. स्वच्छत्वम् अविकारित्वम् शान्तत्वम् इति चेतसः वृत्तिभिर्लक्षणं प्रोक्तम् यथापां प्रकृतिः परा. Synonyms: स्वच्छत्वम्, clarity; अविकारित्वम्, freedom from all distraction; शान्तत्वम्, serenity; iti, thus, chetasaha, of consciousness; vrittibhi, by characteristics; lakshanam, traits; proktam, called; yatha, as; apam, of water; prakritihi, nature state; para, pure. Translation: after the manifestation of the Mahatattva, these features appear simultaneously. As water in its natural state, before coming in contact with earth, is clear, sweet, and unruffled. So the characteristic traits of pure consciousness are complete serenity, clarity, and freedom from distraction. Okay. Purport: the pure status of consciousness or Krishna consciousness exists in the beginning. Just after creation, consciousness is not polluted. The more one becomes materially contaminated, however, the more consciousness becomes obscured. In pure consciousness, one can perceive a slight reflection of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as in clear, unagitated water, free from impurities. One can see everything clearly. So, in pure consciousness or Krishna consciousness, one can see things as they are. One can see the reflection of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and one can see his own existence as well. This state of consciousness is very pleasing, transparent, and sober. In the beginning, consciousness is pure. Text 23 and 24. महतत्वाद् विकुर्वाणाद् भगवद्वीर्य संभवात् क्रियाशक्तिर् अहंकारस् त्रिविधः समापद्यत वैकारिकस् तैजसश्च तामसश्च यतो भवः मनसः चेन्द्रियाणां च भूतानां महताम् अपि. Synonyms: Mahatattva, from the Mahatattva. Mahatattvat, from the Mahatattva. Vikurvanat, undergoing a change. Bhagavat Virya Sambhavat, evolved from the Lord's own energy. Kriya Shaktihi, endowed with active power. Ahankaraha, the material ego. Trividaha, of the three kinds. Samapadyata, sprang up. Vaikarikaha, material ego in transformed goodness. Tejasaha, material ego in passion. Cha, and Tamasaha, material ego in ignorance. Cha, also. Yataha, from which. Bhavaha, the origin. Manasaha, of the mind. Cha, and Indriyanam, of the senses for perception and action. Cha, and Bhutanam, Mahattam, of the five gross elements. Api, also. Translation: the material energy springs upon from the Mahatattva, which evolved from the Lord's own energy. The material ego is endowed predominantly with active power of three kinds: good, passionate, and ignorant. From these three types of material ego, the mind, the senses of perception, and the organs of action and the gross elements evolve. Purport: in the beginning, from clear consciousness or the pure state of Krishna consciousness, the first contamination sprang up. So it is called false ego or identification of the body as self. The living entity exists in the natural state of Krishna consciousness, but he has marginal independence, and this allows him to forget Krishna. Originally, pure Krishna consciousness exists, but because of misuse of marginal independence, there is a chance of forgetting Krishna. This is exhibited in actual life. There are many instances in which someone acting in Krishna consciousness suddenly changes. In the Upanishads, it is stated, therefore, that the path of spiritual realization is just like the spark edge of a razor. The example is very appropriate. One shaves his cheeks with a sharp razor very nicely, but as soon as his attention is diverted from the activity, he immediately cuts his cheek because he mishandles the razor. Not only must one come to the stage of pure Krishna consciousness, but one must also be very careful. Any inattentiveness or carelessness may cause fall down. This fall down is due to false ego. From the status of pure consciousness, the false ego is born because of misuse of independence. We cannot argue about why false ego arises from pure consciousness. Okay, factually, there is always the chance that this will happen, and therefore one has to be very careful. False ego is the basic principle for all material activities which are executed in the modes of material nature. As soon as one deviates from pure Krishna consciousness, he increases his entanglement in material reaction. The entanglement of materialism is the material mind, and from the material mind, the senses and material organs become manifest. Text 25. सहस्रशीर्षं साक्षाद् यम् अनन्तं प्रचक्षते संकर्षणाख्यं पुरुषं भूतेन्द्रिय मनोमयम्. Synonyms: sahasra, thousand. Come on, bro. Sahasra shirsham, with 1,000 heads. Sakshat, directly. Yam, whom. Anantam, ananta. Prachakshate, they call. Sankarshana Akhyam, Sankarshana by name. Purusham, the supreme personality of Godhead. Bhuta, the gross elements. Indriya, the senses. Manahmayam, consisting of the mind. Translation: the threefold Ahankara, the source of the gross elements, the senses, and the mind, is hence identical with them because it is their cause. It is known by the name of Sankarshana, who is directly Lord Ananta with 1,000 heads. Text 26. Kartritvam Karanatvam cha Karyatvam cheti Lakshanam Shantaghora Vimudhatvam iti vasyad ahankriteha. Synonyms: kartritvam, being the doer; karanatvam, being the instrument; cha, and karyatvam, being the effect; cha, also; iti, thus; lakshanam, characteristic; shanta, serene; ghora, active; vimudhatvam, being dull; iti, thus; va, or syat, maybe; ahankriteha, of the false ego. Translation: This false ego is characterized as the doer, as an instrument, and as an effect. It is further characterized as serene, active, or dull according to how it is influenced by the modes of goodness, passion, and ignorance. Purport: Ahankara or false ego is transformed into the demigods, the controlling directors of material affairs. As an instrument, the false ego is represented as different senses and sense organs, and as the result of the combination of the demigods and the senses, material objects are produced. In the material world, we are producing so many things, and this is called advancement of civilization. But actually, the advancement of civilization is a manifestation of the false ego. By false ego, all material things are produced as objects of enjoyment. One has to seize increasing artificial necessities in the form of material objects. One great Acharya, Narottama Das Thakur, Narottama Dasa Thakura has lamented that when one deviates from pure consciousness of Vasudeva or Krishna consciousness, he becomes entangled in material activities. The exact words he uses are Satsanga Chadi Kainu Asate Vilasa Te Karane Lagila Ye Karma Bandha Pansa. I have given up I have given up the pure status of consciousness because I wanted to enjoy in the temporary material manifestation. Therefore, I have been entangled in the network of actions and reactions. Text 27. वैकारिकाद् विकुर्वाणान् मनस्तत्त्वम् अजायत यत् संकल्प विकल्पाभ्याम वर्तते काम संभवः. Synonyms: Vaikarikahat, from the false ego of goodness, Vikurvanat, undergoing transformation, Manaha, the mind, Tattvam, principle, Ajayata, evolved, Yat, whose, Sankalpa, thoughts, Vikalpabhyam, and by reflections, Vartate, happens, Kama, Sambhavaha, the rise of desire. Translation: from the false ego of goodness, another transformation takes place. From this evolves the mind, whose thoughts and reflections give rise to desire. Purport: the symptoms of the mind are determination and rejection, which are due to different kinds of desires. We desire that which is favorable to occur sense gratification, and we reject that which is not favorable to sense gratification. The material mind is not fixed, but the very same mind can be fixed when engaged in the activities of Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, as long as the mind is on the material platform, it is hovering, and all this rejection and acceptance is asat, temporary. It is stated that he whose mind is not fixed in Krishna consciousness must hover between acceptance and rejection. However, advanced a man is in academic qualifications, as long as he is not fixed in Krishna consciousness, he will simply accept and reject, and he will never be able to fix his mind on a particular subject matter. Hmm. Text 28. So it is very difficult for anyone to summarize all these verses. Okay, so let us pay more attention to these things, because it's really hard to remember all these different features of Mahatattva. 28. यद्विदुर ह्यनिरुद्धाख्यम ऋषिकाणाम अभीश्वरम सार सारदेन्दीवर श्यामम सम्राध्यम योगिभिः शनैः synonyms yet which mind viduhu is known he indeed aniruddha akhyam Aniruddha Akhyam by the name of Aniruddha, Krishikanam of the senses, Abhishwaram, the supreme ruler, Sharada, autumnal, Indivara, like a blue lotus, Shyamam, bluish, Samradhyam, who is found, Yogibihi, by the yogis, Shanaihi, gradually. Translation: the mind of the living entity is known by the name of Lord Aniruddha, the supreme ruler of the senses. He possesses a bluish black form like a lotus flower growing in the autumn. He is found solely by the yogis. Purport: The system of yoga entails controlling the mind, and the lord of the mind is Aniruddha. It is stated that Aniruddha is four-handed with Sudarshana Chakra, conch shell, club, and lotus flower. There are 24 forms of Vishnu, each differently named. Although these 24 forms, among these 24 forms, Sankarshna, Aniruddha, Pradyumna, and Vasudeva are depicted very nicely in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, where it is said that Aniruddha is worshipped by the yogis. Meditation upon voidness is a modern invention of the fertile brain of some speculator. Actually, the process of yoga meditation, as prescribed in this verse, should be fixed upon the form of Aniruddha. By meditating on Aniruddha, one can become free from the agitation of acceptance and rejection. When one's mind is fixed upon Aniruddha, he gradually becomes God realized. He approaches the pure status of Krishna consciousness, which is the ultimate goal of yoga. Text 29. Tejasattu vikurvanad buddhi tattvam abhut sati dravya spurana vijnanam indriyanam anugraha. Synonyms: Tejasat, from the false ego in passion, to then vikurvanat, undergoing transformation, buddhi, intelligence, tattvam, principle, abhut, took birth, sati, oh virtuous lady, dravya, objects, spurana, coming into view, vijnanam, ascertaining, indriyanam, to the senses, anugraha, giving assistance. Translation: by transformation of the false ego in passion, intelligence takes place. O virtuous lady, the functions of intelligence are to help in ascertaining the nature of objects when they come into view and to help the senses. Purport: intelligence is the discriminating power to understand an object, and it helps the senses make choices. Therefore, intelligence is supposed to be the master of the senses. The perfection of intelligence is attained when one becomes fixed in the activities of Krishna consciousness. By the proper use of intelligence, one's consciousness is expanded, and the ultimate expansion of consciousness is Krishna consciousness. Text 30. Is it 30, Prabhu? Maybe 30. Yeah, 30. संशयोऽथ विपर्यासो निश्चयः स्मृतिरेव च स्वापयित्युच्यते बुद्धेर्लक्षणं वृत्तितः पृथक् synonyms संशयः doubt atha then viparyasah misapprehension nischayah correct appersion smritihi memory eva also cha and swapah sleep iti thus uchyate or said buddheh of intelligence lakshanam characteristics vrittitaha by their functions pratak different. Translation: doubt, misapprehension, correct apprehension. Okay, doubt, misapprehension, correct apprehension, memory, and sleep, as determined by their different functions, are said to be the distinct characteristics of intelligence. Purport: doubt is one of the important functions of intelligence. Blind acceptance of something does not give evidence of intelligence. Therefore, the word samsaya is very important. In order to cultivate intelligence, one should be doubtful in the beginning. But doubting is not very favorable when information is received from the proper source. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that doubting the words of the authority is the cause of destruction. As described in the Patanjali yoga system, Paramana Vipraya Vikalpa Nidra Smrutayah. By intelligence, one can understand things as they are. By intelligence, only can one understand whether or not he is the body. The study to determine whether one's identity is spiritual or material begins in doubtfulness. When one is able to analyze his actual position, the false identification with the body is detected. This is viparyasa. When false identification is detected, then real identification can be understood. Real understanding is described here as nishchayaha or proved experimental knowledge. This experimental knowledge can be achieved when one has understood the false knowledge. By experimental or proved knowledge, one can understand that he is not the body but spirit soul. Smriti means memory and swapa means sleep. Sleep is also necessary to keep the intelligence in working order. If there is no sleep, the brain cannot work nicely. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is especially mentioned that persons who regulate eating, sleeping, and other necessities of the body in the proper proportion become very successful in the yoga process. These are some of the aspects of the analytical study of intelligence as described in both the Patanjali Yoga system and the Sankhya philosophy system of Kapiladeva in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. Text 31. तेजसानीन्द्रियाणैव क्रियाज्ञानविभागशः प्राणस्य हि क्रिया शक्तिर्बुद्धिर्विज्ञानशक्तिता. Synonyms: Tejasani, produced from egoism in the mode of passion. Indriyani, the senses. Eva, certainly. Kriya, action. Jnana, knowledge. Vibhagasyaha, according to. pranasya, of the vital energy. He, indeed, kriya shakti, the senses of action, buddheh, of the intelligence, vijnana shakti ta, the senses for acquiring knowledge. Translation: Egoism in the mode of passion produces two kinds of senses: the senses for acquiring knowledge and the senses of action. Hmm. The senses of action depend on the vital energy, and the senses for acquiring knowledge depend on intelligence. Purport: It has been explained in the previous verses that mind is the product of ego in goodness, and that the function of the mind is acceptance and rejection according to desire. But here, intelligence is said to be the product of ego in passion. Hmm. That is the distinction between mind and intelligence. Mind is a product of egoism in goodness, and intelligence is a product of egoism in passion. The desire to accept something and reject something is a very important factor of the mind. Since mind is a product of the mode of goodness, if it is fixed upon the Lord of mind, Aniruddha, then the mind can be changed to Krishna consciousness. It is stated by Narottama Dasa Thakura that we always have desires. Desire cannot be stopped. But if we transfer our desires to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that is the perfection of life. As soon as the desire is transferred to lording it over material nature, it becomes contaminated by matter. Desire has to be purified. In the beginning, this purification process has to be carried out by the order of the spiritual master, since the spiritual master knows how the disciples' desires can be transformed into Krishna consciousness. As far as intelligence is concerned, it is clearly stated here that it is a product of egoism in passion. By practice, one comes to the point of the mode of goodness, and by surrendering or fixing the mind upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one becomes a very great personality or a Mahatma. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is clearly said, Samahatma Sudurlabha. Such a great soul is very rare. In this verse, it is clear that both kinds of senses, the senses for acquiring knowledge, Jnanendriya, and the senses for action, Karmendriya, are products of egoism in the mode of passion. And because the sense organs for activity and for acquiring knowledge require energy, therefore, vital energy or life energy is also produced by egoism in the mode of passion. We can actually see, therefore, that those who are very passionate can improve in material acquisition very quickly. It is recommended in the Vedic scriptures that if one wants to encourage a person in acquiring material possessions, one should also encourage him in sex life. He naturally find we naturally find that those who are addicted to sex life are also materially advanced, because sex life or passionate life is the impetus for the material advancement of civilization. For those who want to make spiritual advancement, there is almost no existence of the mode of passion. Only the mode of goodness is prominent. We find that those who engage in Krishna consciousness are materially poor, but one who has eyes can see who is the greater. Although he appears to be materially poor, a person in Krishna consciousness is not actually a poor man, but the person who has no taste for Krishna consciousness and appears to be very happy with material possessions is actually poor. Persons infatuated by material consciousness are very intelligent in discovering things for material comforts, but they have no access to understanding the spirit, soul, and spiritual life. If therefore anyone wants to advance in spiritual life, he has to come back to the platform of purified desire, the purified desire for devotional service, as stated in the Narada Pancharatra. Engagement in the service of the Lord when the senses are purified in Krishna consciousness is called pure devotion.
Oh,
Text
Haribo.
32.
Yes, Prabhu. Okay, let's read one more.
Text 32. Tamasacha vikurvanad bhagavad virya choditat shabdamatram abhut tasman navah srotram tu sabdagam. Synonyms: tamasat, from egoism in ignorance, cha, and vikurvanat, undergoing transformation, bhagavat virya, by the energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, choditat, impelled, shabdamatram, the subtle element sound, abhut, was manifested, tasmat, from that, nabha, either, strotram, the sense of hearing, to, then, shabdagam, which catches sound. Okay. Translation: when egoism in ignorance is agitated by the sex energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the subtle element sound is manifested, and from sound comes the ethereal sky and the sense of hearing. Okay. Purport. It appears from this verse that all the objects of our sense gratification are the products of egoism in ignorance. It is understood from this verse that by agitation of the element of egoism in ignorance, the first thing produced was sound, which is the subtle form of ether. It is stated also in the Vedanta Sutra that sound is the origin of all objects of material possession, and that by sound one can also dissolve this material existence. Anavrittihi shabdat means liberation by sound. The entire material manifestation began from sound, and sound can also end material entanglement if it has a particular potency. The particular sound capable of doing this is the transcendental vibration Hare Krishna. Our entanglement in material affairs has begun from material sound. Now we must purify that sound in spiritual understanding. There is sound in the spiritual world also. If we approach that sound, then our spiritual life begins, and the other requirements for spiritual advancement can be supplied. We have to understand very clearly that sound is the beginning of the creation of all material objects for our sense gratification. Similarly, if sound is purified, our spiritual necessities also are produced from sound. Here it is said that from sound the ether became manifested, and that the air became manifested from ether. How the ethereal sky comes from sound, how the air comes from sky, and how fire comes from air will be explained later on. Sound is the cause of the sky, and sky is the cause of Shrotram, the ear. The ear is the first sense for receiving knowledge. One must give oral reception to any knowledge one wants to receive, either material or spiritual. Therefore, Strotram is very important. The Vedic knowledge is called Shruti. Knowledge has to be received by hearing. By hearing only can we have access to either material or spiritual enjoyment. In the material world, we manufacture many things from our material comfort simply by hearing. They are already there, but just by hearing, one can transform them. If we want to build a very high skyscraper, This does not mean that we have to create it. The materials for the skyscraper, wood, metal, earth, etc., are already there, but we make our intimate relationship with those already created material elements by hearing how to utilize them. Modern economic advancement for creation is also a scroll down bro, is also a product of hearing, and simply one can create a favorable field of spiritual activities by hearing from the right source. Arjuna was a gross materialist in the bodily conception of life and was suffering from the bodily concept very acutely. But simply by hearing, Arjuna became a spiritualized, Krishna conscious person. Hearing is very important, and that hearing is produced from the sky. By hearing only can we make proper use of that which already exists. The principle of hearing to properly utilize preconceived materials is applicable to spiritual paraphernalia as well. We must hear from the proper spiritual source. Hmm.
Haribol. Thank you so much, Prabhu. Okay, now we go to six Astakam prayers.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, Hare Krishna, Shish Prabhu, Dandar Pram, Jai Shri Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Hari Bol.
Thank you for joining, Prabhu. Very nice to see you.
Oh.
Cheto darpanamarjanam
Hare Krishna.
bhavamahadavagnirvapanam
Oh,
Shreyah
sorry.
Chandrika Vitaranam Vidyavadu Jivanam Anandam Buddhivardhanam Pratipadam Purnamritasvadanam Sarvatma Snapanam Param Vijayate Sri Krishna Sankirtanam.
नाम्नामकारि बहुधा निज सर्वशक्तिस् तत्रार्पितानि मितः स्मरणेन कालः एतादृशी तव कृपा भगवन् ममापि दुर्दैवमीदृशीं ह्याजनि नानुरागः
Trinadapi Sunichena Tarorapi Sahishnuna Manina Manatena Kirtaniya Sada Hari.
न धनं न जनं न सुन्दरीं कवितां वा जगदीश कामये मम जन्मनि जन्मनीश्वरे भवताद्भक्तिरहेतुकी त्वयि
Nandatanuja Kinkaram Patitam Mam Vishame Bhavam Budau Kripaya Tava Pada Pankaja Sthitatuli Sadrisham Vishintaya.
नयनं गलदश्रुधारया वदनं गद्गदहृदया गिरा पुलकैर्निचितं वपुः कदा तव नामग्रहणे भविष्यति
Yugaitam Nimeshena Chakshusha Pravirshaitam Shunyaitam Jagat Sarvam Govinda Virahena Me.
आश्लिष्य वा पादरतां पिनस्तु माम् अदर्शनं मर्महतां करोतु वा यथा तथा वा विदधातु लम्पटो मत्प्राणनाथस्तु स एव नापरः
Haribo. Glory to the Sri Krishna Sankirtan, which cleanses the heart of all the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes the fire of conditional life of repeated birth and death. The Sankirtan movement is the prime benediction for humanity at large because it spreads the rays of the benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss and it enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we are always anxious.
O my Lord, your holy name alone can render all benedictions to living beings, and thus you have hundreds and millions of names like Krishna and Govinda. In these transcendental names, you have invested all your transcendental energies. There are not even hard and fast rules for chanting these names. O my Lord, out of kindness, You enable us to easily approach you by chanting your holy names, but I am so unfortunate that I have no attraction for them.
One should chant the holy name of
One
the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than the straw in the street. One should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and ready to offer all respect to others. Oh. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly.
O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your causeless devotional service birth after birth.
O son of Maharaj Nanda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor, yet somehow or other I have fallen into the ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet.
O my Lord, when will my eyes be decorated with the tears of love flowing constantly when I chant your holy name? When will my voice choke up? And when will the hair of my body stand on end at the recitation of your name?
O Govinda, feeling your separation, I am considering a moment to be like 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I am feeling all vacant in the world in your absence.
I know no one but Krishna as my Lord, and he shall remain so even if he handles me roughly in his embrace or makes me broken hearted by not being present before me. He is completely free to do anything and everything, for he is always my worshipful Lord unconditionally.
Haribol, Shri Siksastakam ki jai, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki jai.
Jai, Jai.
Bahujanma Karayadi Shravana Kirtan, Taputana Paya Krishna Pade Premadan. If one is infested with the 10 offenses in the chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, despite his endeavor to chant the holy name for many birds, he will not get the love of God. That is the ultimate goal of this chanting. The 10 offenses against the holy name are as follows. The first offense is to blaspheme the devotees who have dedicated their lives for propagating the holy name of the Lord.
Second offense is to consider the names of demigods like Lord Shiva or Lord Brahma to be equal to or independent of the name of Lord Vishnu.
Third offense is to disobey the orders of the spiritual master or consider him as an ordinary person.
Fourth offense is to blaspheme the Vedic literature or literature in pursuance of the Vedic version.
Fifth offense is to consider the glories of chanting Hare Krishna to be imagination.
Sixth offense is to give some interpretation on the holy name of the Lord.
Seventh offense to commit sinful activities on the strength of the holy name of the Lord.
Eighth offense is to consider the chanting of Hare Krishna as one of the ritualistic activities, one of the auspicious ritualistic activities offered in the Vedas as fruitive activities, Karma Kanda.
Ninth offense to instruct the faithless person about the glories of the holy name.
Tenth offense is not to have complete faith in the chanting of the holy names and to maintain material attachments even after understanding so many instructions on this matter. It is also an offense to be inattentive while chanting. Every devotee who claims to be a Vaishnava must guard against these offenses in order to quickly achieve the desired success, Krishna Prema. Let us offer our respectful obeisances unto all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord. They can fulfill the desires of everyone just like desire trees, and they are full of compassion for the fallen souls. Pancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyo eva
Kripa
cha
Sindhubhya
patitanam
Vacha
pavanebhyo
Pitanam
vaishnavibhyo namo
Pavanebhyo
namaha.
Namaha. Ananda Gaudiya Vaishnava ki jai, Srila
Jai,
Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai
Jai,
Gaura Premanande, Hari Hari
Hari
Bol.
Bol.
Hari Hari Bol.
Thank you all dear devotees for joining this reading session.
Thank you, Hare Krishna. Thank you, Praveen Prabhu, for reminding me. Hare Krishna.
No
Hari
problem,
Bol.
Prabhu. Please join tomorrow's Ishta Goshti as well, Prabhu.
Oh
We'll
yes,
try,
everyone
Prabhu.
please
Hare
join
Krishna.
us.
Anyhow, I will drop a message to you personally as well. But please be available for the tomorrow's Ishtagoshti, which will happen at around 4 p.m. IST.
4 o'clock, right? I saw. Yes, Prabhu. All right. Hare Krishna. Hare
Okay, thank you,
Thank
Prabhu.
you
Hare
so much,
Krishna.
Prabhu.